All right, good morning and welcome to Ag Talk and Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. So, yeah, there's a lot of things on my mind today. Not sure what they are, though. No, that's not true. Anyway, I was just watching a little bit of Farming, Fixing, and Fabricating. Andy up there in New York. He did a thing on black pipe and then he was talking about his, 8360R with the IVT transmission, that he will never buy another one of those again. Oh, man. Deere definitely had some problems with their IVTs, but the problems with their IVTs were actually not Deere's problems. John Deere makes pretty much a bulletproof transmission in the 8000 series. So let me get that straight. Those transmissions are pretty bulletproof, but the hydros in them are not Deere made. They're made by Nippon-Denso, I think, or Sauer Danfoss. I think they're Danfoss. I had problems with mine. I did in the 8530. When I got the tractor, the hydro, and I'm just going to warn everybody here, hydros or these IVT transmissions, they are, I want to say they're a higher maintenance transmission, but not really. They need to be taken care of a little more rigorously than, say, a power shift. Now, Andy bought that tractor maybe a year or so ago. Might be 2 years ago. I don't know. I remember when he got it, and I think that's the tractor I remember seeing him get. And the problem with buying used tractors is you don't know what people did to them. I was told when I bought the two tractors from England, the 8530 and the 7530, that those tractors were serviced by John Deere only because they were what you call a hire tractor. And so those tractors would be basically rented out and hired out to, or leased out to other farmers, but the deal was they were supposed to be maintained by the dealership. And a John Deere dealership should be the guys that do the maintenance on them. Now, the problem with those is that you would think that John Deere dealer would use John Deere oil. And a hydro, because there's a lot, I think they generate a lot of heat personally, and there's a high pitch or a high speed motors that these things drive, and they speed up and slow down constantly. And there's just a lot of wear and tear on the oil itself. Now, if you read the manual I have on the oil side of it, you will know that you really need to change that oil quite often. It's not like, oh, you just leave that oil in there and add when it's low, like a lot of people do with their power shifts and their synchronized transmissions and other types of transmissions that are out there. The hydro transmission needs to have that oil changed. Water is not good for a hydro. Air bubbles, not good for a hydro. They're just not, it's not good for a hydro. So when I got the 8530 and the 7530 from England, boy, that 8530 was almost unbearable to drive. You could ask Cody, he would tell you flat out that he couldn't stand it because it had such a high-pitched squeal to it. It was making this high-pitched noise, and I didn't like it. We ran it early in the spring, but before we went into the baling, I changed the oil to John Deere oil. Now, that John Deere oil, those hydros are designed, and the oil is designed to run in those hydros. Now, I know farmers are looking for a cheap deal. Honestly, I know what farmers do. They'll go down to their local Napa, pick up the cheapest bucket, a yellow bucket of 303 oil or tractor hydraulic oil or just plain old hydraulic oil, and they'll dump that into their $200 and some $1,000 tractor just to try and save a few dollars. Well, that unfortunately, that is the sad case. And I believe that was the case when I got my tractors from England. All right, so when I decided that I was going to make that oil change, yeah, it was expensive. It's a $1,000 oil change. By the time you change the filters and you change all that oil out of there, there's 3 different reservoirs in an IVT in those things. And if you put anything other than John Deere oil in there, you are looking for trouble. That's just my honest opinion. I was running for the longest time Valvoline Hydraulic Oil. I've had problems with transmissions. If you've watched my channel for the last 12 years, you know that I have had transmission problems. Yeah, Valvoline is not a cheap oil, and they say it meets or exceeds OEM, John Deere, Allison, all these different companies. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't. They don't. They don't. They are, okay. So I guess I could explain it this way. I actually was working in a field when I forget what I was doing. I was baling. I know I was baling, but I think I still had the New Holland. So I did not have the 8530 at that time. And a man shows up at my farm. He says, "Hey, I'm on my way to Connecticut or I believe it was Connecticut, it might have been New York." And he says, "I'm going to see some family up there, and I Googled your address. Do you mind if I ride along with you?" I'm like, "No, just get up in here. You're taking up my time. You want to talk to me? Let's go." Well, he was a retired oil executive. He was the guy that bought and sold base oil. Okay, so base oil. Base oil is like Exxon makes base oil, Chevron makes base oil, and everybody else buys their base oil. All right, so John Deere buys their base oil, and then, or the company that Ashland, I think, is who, Ashland Oil Company, which is another, I think Ashland is another company that makes base oil. Ashland, I think, is Valvoline. I'm not 100% sure. So if you buy Valvoline oil, hydraulic oil, and it says meets or exceeds John Deere OEM, the base oil is the same, but the additives are different. See, they have a broad range in which they have to cover with that oil. So they've got Case IH New Holland, that they have to cover those. You have to cover Allison or Detroit, any of these companies that they put their label on. So they have additives, a little bit of additives for each and every one of those things, not the full load, additives for each one of those things so that they meet or exceed. So some companies have a lower additive quality, so they exceed those, and some have a higher one, so they supposedly meet those. So when you read that label and it's got like 25 different companies listed that it meets or exceeds, well, somewhere in there, someone's got the highest need for different additives, and then down the list, there's the lowest need for those additives. So maybe John Deere is at the high end, and they've got the least amount of additives for that company in there, and say, I don't know, Allis-Chalmers. We'll use Allis-Chalmers because Allis-Chalmers has been out of business since 1983 or 4. So Allis-Chalmers tractors, at that time, they didn't need all the additives for that oil. And the oil of that era was lesser quality or less refined than what it is today. So that's why you end up with those oil additives. I suggest, and I'm just some dumb farmer in New Jersey that doesn't know much about anything at all. I just know enough to be dangerous, as most people say. I will tell you this. If you're running a John Deere, go down to the John Deere dealer and buy that oil for that hydro. Power shifts, still, they need that oil. They need that particular type of oil. They use the same clutch plates, and those clutch plates are designed to be run in John Deere oil. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what it is, John Deere oil. So when I changed the oil out of the 8530 and the 7530, I pulled the plug and it's crystal clear, like no color to it at all. It looked like water, like pure water, and it ran like pure water. I was like, and it wasn't hot. It wasn't hot. It was warm because I ran the tractor maybe 50 feet or 100 yards or whatever the hell it was from where it was parked to where I was going to be changing the oil. And yes, it was crystal clear. So I didn't like the look of it. I didn't like the feel of it. So I was pretty much under the assumption that John Deere dealer in England was like, this is going to be an export tractor. Let's just put the cheapest shit we can put in there. Or maybe they've always ran the cheapest shit they could get in those tractors. You don't know. It's a hired tractor, it goes to so many hours and they're like, sayonara, on to the next series. And then they get those in, and then people lease those for a couple, 3 years, get 1,000, 2, 3, 4,000, no more than 4,000 hours on these tractors before they're ready to swap them out. I was quite pleased with the tractors when I got them, and I was even more pleased with the 8530 when I changed the oil, because it was like, wow, I don't hear any of that noise. That high-pitched squeal that gave you a headache, I don't hear that. It's gone. And I put hearing aids in now since then, so I should really hear it. But it really cleared that up. The other thing was, when I switched back to John Deere oil, my 7810, that had a really weird noise to it when you would run it down the road. It was just like a gnashing gear noise, and it made me nervous, like, oh my God, is this thing going to last? What's going on here? Put John Deere oil in it, and all those noises have gone away. So if you're running a Case New Holland, go buy Case New Holland oil. If you're running a John Deere, buy John Deere oil. If you're running a whatever, buy the oil that the manufacturer produced for it, because it has the proper additives in it, not just a broad spectrum of additives that will make that work, just make it work. You can go buy cheap oil if you're just running a gear pump for a hydraulic ram on a log splitter, or even like my walking floor. You don't need anything. There's no clutch plates in there. It's just O-rings that go back, and the O-rings on rams. That's it. So those types of applications, you can get away with that watered down crap from Napa or Tractor Supply or Rural King or wherever you're getting your oil. I'm a big proponent for high quality greases and oils. I have been since a long time, and I always felt that I was getting the best oil with Valvoline, and boy, I was sorely mistaken. Don't buy that stuff for your expensive tractors. Buy the oil that the manufacturer produces. And now that I've gone on enough about IVT transmissions, I'm really sorry that Andy had a bad experience with them. John Deere, $24,000 though to repair that. He must have had some clutch plates bad in them. I had a guy out to do some electronic work to my 6210R, 7530, and Cody 7930. We had some electronic upgrades done, and quite happy with the results of that, by the way. And at least I am. I mean, I was pretty thrilled with it. Got some other work that needs to be done to it that won't go on camera, and that's okay, because nobody needs to know what we do. And anyway, there you go. With that being said, yeah, I think that the 8530 had, my 8530, they claimed that the hydros were faulty. There was O-rings in there that failed because they used the wrong type. I feel those O-rings failed because they were using the wrong type of oil in it. I had paid for a new transmission to go in that, they reduced the price of the hydro because the hydros were faulty. Okay, that's what they claimed. There was a recall on those things, and they gave me, I want to say they paid for half of the hydro. So the work was $6,000. The hydro was $6,000. So it was like $12,000 and change. And then if you added 6 to 12, what is that, 18? Right? 6, 12, 18. So it would have been $18,000 to replace that. Now, and the hydro in an 8360R is the same as the hydro in the 8530. Yes, it is. It was the same one. So last year I got, last winter, not this past winter, winter of 2020, I got a phone call from John Deere, and they're like, hey, would you mind bringing that tractor in here? We got to scope it. I was like, scope it? He's like, yeah, we got to take it apart, pull pipes off, and we got to get a camera in to the transmission to read the serial number of the hydro to see if that hydro needs to be replaced. I was like, well, I just put a new hydro in it. And they're like, yeah, well, we're not sure if the hydro that was put in it was correct or not. I was like, what the far are you talking about? I says, I just paid $12,000 to have this job done, and you're telling me that the hydro, I says, it's a brand new hydro. Don't you have the serial number for the hydro that you put in? And they're like, well, we don't generally write down the serial numbers to hydros. I was like, what? You just put it in. You bought it. It should be in your paperwork. I was a little bit disturbed because I don't want my tractor ripped apart again. But anyways, when they did it the first time, there was a little weep of oil where they joined the cases. And I'm not a complainer. And I was like, a little weep of oil, whatever, it'll be fine. I was actually thinking of splitting the tractor a little bit, putting new oil, new sealant in there and redoing it because it was annoying, but it wasn't the end of the world. So I figured, well, all right, whatever. So I take it out there, and lo and behold, it's a bad hydro. I'm like, the hydro's been working good. He says, yeah, but it's a ticking time bomb. It fell within the serial numbers of hydros that were not assembled correctly. Like, okay, whatever. How much is this going to cost me? Well, it's just going to cost bits and pieces if there's something that is above and beyond that needs to be repaired. I'm like, something that's above and beyond that needs to be repaired. I wonder what that could possibly be. So I got a bill for $80 for some stupid O-rings that were bad when they tore it apart, which $80, you know, I didn't have to pay for the labor. I just had to pay for the parts because they were already in there. So they did that work, and I was thrilled to death. Thank you, you know, and I appreciate it. The tractor runs flawlessly. Teresa runs that tractor. I run the tractor. Everybody runs the tractor. It's a flawless tractor. I do need to get a new shift handle because there's a spring in there that has broken and it won't put it over into park. And the little guy, I worry about the little guy just grabbing that thing and pull forward and down across the field and killing one of us or himself. So we really have to be careful with that one. Yeah, so that is really the only IVT transmission that I ever had any problems with. Now, the problems with Andy's tractors, you know, like the 7000 series, he had what did he have, a 7290? Oh, shit. He had a 7000 something R that he had problems with that one. That is pretty common tractor to have problems with the IVT. The 7930 and his 7000 series tractors share the same transmission. But the 7930 had different controllers for that transmission. And they claimed that the 7930's IVTs were more, well, they were good. They were a good transmission. The transmission isn't much different than it is in the 7000R series, the 7R series tractors. But what do you do? They changed controllers, changed shifting types, and burn up clutches. And John Deere had that problem for several years in the 7000 series. I was looking at buying a new 7R series tractor a few years ago. I'm going to say between 2015 and 2018. And the dealer, he said, you don't want one of those, Wesley. Don't buy one of those. Go buy an older used tractor until they get this straightened out, which I was quite thankful for because I've heard a lot of people that bought 7R series tractors and were like, yeah, no, we can't. You know, I'll never buy another one of those. And they actually went to the case tractors for their CVTs. And I thought, well, that's a little extreme. They sacrificed the cost of parts and repairs or even warranty work, time down from warranty work, because most of that stuff was covered under warranty work. It was a known problem. There was recalls on them. And I do believe they changed the controllers out to fix the problem. But now those problems are solved in the new 7R series. That's what everybody tells me. I don't own one. I don't really want one. Just because of that, maybe I would give it a few years. I like the 6210R that has a ZF transmission, which is similar. It's a heavier built ZF transmission than it is in the 7530. Now, the fellow that was out to do the computer work, he also does some mechanic work, and he said that the difference between the 7R series and the 6000 series, the 6R series at that time, was that they took the transmission out of the 30 series, the 7930, and that's a John Deere transmission which has 2 ranges. Okay, 2 ranges, not 4 ranges that the ZF transmission has. So there's a problem there, and they burn out the number 2 clutch. That's what happens with the 7000 series, 7R series. In the 7930 or the 30 series, that didn't happen because the way that they shifted. You will feel that shift in a 7930. You won't feel it shift in like the 7R series because they changed the way they shift, and it would burn it out within a few thousand hours, like 2,000 hours, you're done. You got to go tear the thing apart or replace it. Now, those transmissions, new from Deere or reman from Deere, are like $35,000, $40,000 to put a new transmission in. And that's insanity. But to do the work and to replace that number 2 clutch in those tractors, it costs you about $5,000 between parts and labor. And I'm sure Andy could do it. I don't know why he didn't do it, but I'm sure he could do it. It looks like he tears into tractors pretty good up there. I would do it. I've done those transmissions. I did the power quad transmission. I'm not afraid of a hydro transmission or a ZF transmission or even that 7930 transmission. You just unbolt the ass end and all the hoses and stuff and slide it out from underneath or roll it out from underneath. You don't even need to put a jack in there. They're kind of balanced. I took a pipe and held the bottom of the drawbar, and then I was able to wiggle it up and down on the 7410 and pull that quad range out of there, or power quad out of there, and redid that. I've done that one kind of twice, only once really. I did the synchronizers in that once, and I did all the power packs in that one. I completely rebuilt that transmission, so we're golden. And in Europe, you're not allowed to tear into an IVT transmission, or at least they are not. They have to do an exchange program. But here in the United States, we can pull them apart and fix them if we want, and that's a nice thing. So there you go. I like the IVTs. I would not do my job without an IVT. How about you, Teresa? Do you like IVTs?
Absolutely.
You love the IVT. The only thing, and like I said with the IVT, taking care of them, Teresa did this, and she found out that you don't do this, is those IVTs will run away from you. If you're going down a hill, it'll be like 40 miles an hour before the thing starts beeping at you and carrying on. It does not hold the tractor back like a power shift would, so it just doesn't. And you have to use your brakes and pull back on the throttle. And that's the way those work. Now, the new ones, from what I'm told, will actually brake for you. I know that the 6210R, when you put your foot on the brake, that brakes the transmission as well. It really will stop you fast. Too fast, if you ask me. I get into 7530 and you got to actually push on the brake. You get in that 6210R, you don't have to push in on that brake very hard because you'll be into the glass if you don't have your seatbelt on. But what she did was she pulled the stick back because she was going too fast. And she says, "Oh my God, there's red lights. It's telling me to stop, stop, stop." I was like, "Put your foot on the brake. Don't touch that handle." Well, I instructed her to pull the throttle. She pulled the transmission stick back, that little, your speed stick back. So, speed stick, yeah, good deodorant. Anyway, so that's what you had there. So don't do that. Don't be pulling back on that IVT handle, and don't neglect the oil. So I'm probably pretty sure, and I don't know what Andy puts in his tractors, but if Andy, you're watching this thing or listening to it as you're doing something with a shit spreader someplace, John Deere oil in those. 100% John Deere oil. You can add Lucas synthetic oil stabilizer to it as well if you want, at like a gallon or two per. Well, if you put 20 gallons in, put a gallon in. If you put 40 gallons in, put 2 gallons in. In that 8360, you're looking at 40 some gallons in that thing. So you could probably put 2.5 gallons of synthetic oil stabilizer in there, and that just lubricates stuff. It causes them to stick a little better. Use the synthetic, don't use the conventional, just for that reason. It really, trust me on that one. But and you don't need to. You really don't need to. I put Lucas synthetic oil stabilizer in the power quads. I don't put it in the IVTs. I have, but I don't like to. Don't do the lesser quality oil and think that Lucas is going to rejuvenate it to where John Deere needs it to be. If those clutch plates chatter, they deteriorate, and that's it. They need to slip. And yes, they need to slip if you're thinking I'm crazy. But what happens with synchronizers? Cheap oil. When you use a synchronizer, all it's got to do is just chatter a little bit, and that stuff is like a porcelain. It's like a porcelain, it's like a porcelain-faced brake pad. And if you chatter those, it's just like if you chatter them on your brakes. You feel that chatter in your brakes, it just starts chipping them apart. And that's exactly what happens to synchronizers. That's exactly what happens to the clutch plates, is that chatter. Once they start chattering, and you may not even hear it, But if you feel a shift in those IVTs and you've put crappy oil in there, guess what, buddy? You're chattering your clutch plate, your clutch bands or discs, or there are discs in that. So you're chattering those clutch discs. The facing is going to come off. It will continue to run, and then one will collapse the next and the next and the next, because once you get one chipped up, then it's going to chip up the next one, and so on and so forth. The filter will catch the crap, but pull the bottom screen out, and if you see little squares, like little squares of God only knows what material, you're already screwed, and you really need to go back. You're going to have to tear it apart. So cheap oil will destroy your tractor, whether you like it or not. Yeah, so I guess I've rambled on about that long enough. I sold my field corn, the corn, out of the bin over a month ago, and I'm waiting for it to get picked up. I'm starting to get a little annoyed. It is Saturday. I'm going to call Monday morning and say, hey, let's say we get this damn corn out of here. Please, I need the money. I got to pay for my seed corn. I have a seed corn bill. It's sitting here. It's like insane money, and I sold the corn so I could pay the man so I could get my seed corn delivered, and I got a month before we're going to be planting corn. So, well, yeah, so that's that. So, come on, let's get this corn out of here. I'll give him a call, and if he can't haul it, I'll haul it myself to whatever mill he tells me I got to go to, and he will pay me the trucking to haul it, which is probably about 40 cents a bushel. Or I get to haul it out to him. I don't care. I can haul it right to his place. He's not that far from where I deliver mulch hay to, and then I can grab a load of compost back. Yeah, buddy, that'll work. Might be able to do that. Might be efficiently enough, too. And just load the bitch up and go for broke. Yeah, nothing wrong with that, right? I don't think so. Anyway, what was I going to say about that? Yeah, so that's that. I got to get the seed corn paid for. You know, I was supposed to pay for it a month ago. That's it. And it's got to be done. Or I'm not going to have seed corn to plant. And then I'm kind of like, what am I going to do? Pay big bucks for shit that I don't really want? If I can even get it. So maybe I'll have to call him, because I got a chemical order that's got to be purchased. I need 2,4-D and Trizar. And that should do that. But as far as this analysis goes, of this compost, I did make a mistake, or was misunderstood when I started this whole deal with the compost. The analysis is per a yard, okay? And generally a cubic yard is around a ton, right around a ton. It's a ton of dirt, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but for the most part, a ton. I think a cubic meter is a metric ton, if I'm correct. So that would be 2,200 pounds, but a cubic yard should be right around a ton. So I always felt that it would be a ton. Well, I'm looking at this analysis, and the bulk density is actually 1,000 pounds per cubic yard. Yes, 1,000 pounds per cubic yard. So last year I put on around 2.5 tons to the acre of material to that corn over at my grandparents' place. And I was like, holy shit, man, you would not believe it. Anybody that drove by that corn, they're like, yeah, that's really nice corn. And I combined that corn, and yeah, it was really nice corn. Like, it was really good corn. I expected 175 bushels, and I did bounce 308 is what I averaged on one 14-acre field. I was ecstatic. Everything else was in that 220 to 260 range. The home farm did not yield as well on 2 fields, which dropped my yield from that 220, 240, 250 down to, and that was excellent corn, don't get me wrong. It was still in that 170 range. But yeah, it dropped it down. I had an overall yield of 216 bushels to the acre on 140 acres of corn. So I was very pleased with that. The difference between the home farm and my grandparents' farm was that I used a blend of fertilizers over there, which included ESN, ammonium sulfate, super triple phosphate, or 1846O, and I think that's super triple, and a fair amount of potash. The home farm had more compost, but I only put about 60 units of potash and nitrogen down. The available phosphates in the compost was not enough the available phosphates and potash was not enough for what I was trying to do. So this year I'm going to use a blend on all the acres. I will not need to use as much on all of the acres. I will probably be able to get away with about the same amount as I did on that 200 or that 80-acre farm over there, where I would only put about 2.5 tons to the acre of compost on. I should be able to do at least 150 acres with the amount of fertilizer that I put over there. But we will know when I pull the soil tests. Fertilizer is extraordinarily expensive right now. Anybody that doesn't know this has not talked to their fertilizer plant or is just been living under a rock. Nitrogen's closing in on $400 a ton for 32%. Everything else is just, we're looking at 30% increases. 30% increases. Thank you, Russia. Thank you, Joe Biden. See, this guy has no stones in his pants. This guy is a woman. He's got a vagina. And instead of saying, hey, you know what, you're not going to do this to our farmers, this is what's going to happen. If you continue to do this crap, then we're going to sanction you more, and that's what it's going to be. But you know what? He's just like, I'm taking a day off. I'm going to put a lid on it. I'm going to have Kamala do this. And she doesn't do anything. So basically what we have down in the White House is a dead bag of skin with strings through its arms and legs that they go, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, he's a puppet. And you got the cackling whore from California, and she's not doing anything good. We've got major problems all through this country, and it's all happened in the last 4 months. Well, wait a minute, it's April, 4 months. In the last 4 months. Right. Started in November, though. I will say this. After the election, that's when the first jump of fertilizer went up. That was when the first jump happened. November, December. It's all gone up ever since. Diesel fuel, same thing. Fuel oil. What are we looking at for fuel oil now? We're over $3 a gallon for road fuel. $2 and change for off-road fuel. Last year was $1.60. $1.60 a gallon for off-road fuel. Today, well over $1 more. It's $1 more a gallon. So I buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of diesel fuel every year. I think I did over $100,000 last year in diesel fuel. So in that $100,000 worth of, or 90, well, my wife could tell me. She had the paperwork here. Might even be right here. Let's see. I do. Fuel oil, $71,000. Right there. 71,000. 71,000. Right? $71,000 in fuel oil last year alone. So we're up 60%. Because it's $1 more, $1.62, 100% would be $1.62 more, but we might be 100% up. So that $71,000 could easily turn into $140,000 for that same fuel oil. And I don't see hay going up. I don't see, too much. And if it does, it'll be in a little bale, and people will start selling their animals off, and because they can't afford it. Because everything is like oblonged, Same thing with corn. Corn hit a high. Yeah, it's going to cost more to grow corn. It's going to cost more to grow soybeans. Soybeans is your best bang for your buck right now. I'm not into feeding deer, so I will not be growing soybeans right now, and I just don't plan on it at all. The neighbor can do that, and that's okay. Let him put the soybeans in. I'll grow corn. Deer will eat the soybeans, hide in the corn. He can't shoot him in my corn, puts him out of business, and then I take over his land. It's that simple. I'm like a capitalist here. Oh, yeah? Sorry about your luck, pal. And so I'll be the deer hideout, and my secret army will go out and devastate all the neighboring properties. And then I'll go pick them up. That's all. That's simple. But with a higher soybean price, the deer can eat 2/3 of it, and they'll still squeak out an average yield or cost per acre, or whatever the hell it is. I don't know if they're getting their fertilizer back, but a lot of guys don't. You know, and it's still kind of asinine here. I watch them do this all the time. Is, you know, they'll put soybeans in year after year after year, right? Beans on beans on beans on beans on beans, or beans on wheat and wheat on beans, and double crop and beans after wheat, and pathetic yields on beans and pathetic yields on wheat. And they're wondering, why in the hell is this like mediocre all the time? Well, it's mediocre because they don't till the soil ever. No-till farming is fine. It's cheaper. You save on diesel fuel. You save on wear and tear on equipment. I get that. But when it comes down to it, the yield drag, to me, doesn't offset the benefits of it. And if you go out west, you don't see anybody doing the no-till thing. Very rare do you see in the Midwest no-till farming. It's just, you can do it, and it's fine. You got the equipment to do it. It's fine. But don't expect to hit those bumper crop yields. And I did it. I would continue to do no-till farming to a point. With soybeans, I would think would be the better bet, you know. But still, I've grown soybeans, and every time I work that soil and put soybeans in the ground, I'm telling you right now, I out-yielded anything I ever did with no-till farming. And some people forget. And of course, you know, in the fall, because we are on wet ground, it does benefit you to do no-till because you're not getting stuck. But the equipment today is much faster and more efficient, and I think that we could get the beans off pretty quickly. But anybody that I ever saw break yield records always tilled that soil. So that's just my thoughts. And beans on beans on beans with a very little fertilizer program. You know, it's like, it used to be corn, and then you put beans in, and then the beans took up the nutrients from what was left behind corn. And in no-till situations, and I've seen this in my own personal experience, because I used to do this, is take corn, got corn out there, and then you plant beans, and then you would see every 38 inches, the beans would have like a yellow streak where there was no fertilizer, because we didn't put fertilizer in the row too much. We would, just like a starter, but then we would broadcast the rest. So right where the row is, and it takes nitrogen to break down corn stalks, and this was another thing, was that soybeans do need a little bit of nitrogen to get up and go. If you don't know this, if you put ammonium sulfate, just like 50 pounds of ammonium sulfate, which is like, it's nothing. It's like 12 units of nitrogen to the acre. Or not even 12 units. It's 10.5 units of nitrogen to the acre, 50 pounds. So 10.5 units of nitrogen doesn't sound like a lot, right? It doesn't, but you get the sulfur and you get that nitrogen. Well, that nitrogen, before soybean plants get to the height where their nodules are set and they start producing their own nitrogen, they need a little bit of nitrogen. But you would see just the yellowing where the rows of corn were, because the root mass was taking nitrogen to break down. And you could just see it. And when you have a weak plant, that leads you into disease and insect damage, which was always a battle. And when I was done growing soybeans, I was like, you know what, I'm done with this shit. I'm feeding deer. I'm fighting this stuff. We were putting potash on and nitrogen, a potash and ammonium sulfate mix onto soybeans. I would actually, when I would spray the fields with to burn down, if I needed to burn down, I would add nitrogen to it to break down the corn stalks. Because if you don't, you're just fighting yourself. And that's what we were doing. I mean, we were doing that. And then later we were using fish emulsion, which was a deer deterrent. And that fish emulsion was actually a foliar feed fertilizer. Now, where there were no deer, that foliar feed fertilizer or that fish emulsion, God, I will tell you what, man. We had 80 bushel beans, man. They were pouring in the combine like corn. I mean, just, you know, you take 25-foot grain platform pouring into, and that's small to today's standards, but on that TR96, a 25-foot grain platform was pretty damn impressive. And it just filled that bin so fast on 80 bushel beans, but then you get to the other side of the field and it's like 8 bushels, 7 bushels, 4 bushels, no bushels. You go and you see these little plants and the cutter bar is just cutting them and they're laying there and it's dicing them up and they're falling out on the ground and you're like, ah! You're going nuts, and you just want to go to a clock tower and start shooting deer from a clock tower because them bastards just took your 80 bushel beans and dropped them down to 18 bushels. Because along the edge you get 0, and then it gets up, 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 up until you get to the middle of the field. So you go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and then you get to the middle of the field, and it's like, well, I'm at 45, 50 bushels. And then you hit that spot where the deer never were because cars go up and down the road there, and it's like 80, 70, 60, 40, 30, 20, right on down. Done. So I gave up, and that killed our yield, the entire yield on that year where we had really good beans, where there were no deer pressure, like 60 to 80 bushel beans. And anybody that doesn't believe me, well, that's okay. I have videos to prove it. And, it took us down to 18 bushels to the acre, on the whole. I think we had 250 bushel acres of beans. We got 18 bushels of beans averaged. And I was just like, fuck this. That's the end of this. I am not feeding these deer. Now, we got a healthy coyote population here. There's a couple of bears going on. And the deer population, now bears will fuck up corn, trust me, excuse my language, but they will. But still, coyotes are getting fawns. They're going to be in full swing here pretty soon, around April 15th. They're going to start dropping their fawns. April 15th to May 1st, they're going to start dropping their fawns, and the coyotes will be fat and happy. And that will just continue to decline the deer population. And there are some sickly looking deer. I think there's some CWD, which I would love to see CWD wipe these bastards out. Because quite honestly, if I could grow 50, 60, 70 bushel soybeans, which I know we can here on this soil, if it is treated correctly, I would go back to growing grain. I really, truly would. It's easier. Just so you know, it's easier. Anybody that says that growing grain is hard work, it's intense in the spring, it's intense in the fall. But in the summer, you want to take a 4th of July and go down to the seashore for 4 or 5 days, that corn and beans is just going to continue to grow. It's not going to make any difference. You want to take off to the Bahamas in July, hang out there for a week and a half, corn and soybeans are going to keep growing. You're not going to stop the deer, so what are you worrying about? Yeah, you could do that. And you can actually have some animals and raise animals, which as silly as this may sound, I'm thinking of buying feeder calves, feeder steers, and turning them loose on these corn stalks. And there's a wooded area at home. Just turning them loose on the corn stalks and just feeding them a little bit of hay and a little bit of grain. And come springtime, sell them. Add 300-400 pounds to them for very little cost, and boom, out the door they go. So when it's summertime, I'm baling hay. I don't have to worry about cattle. But yeah, that's kind of a plan that I may or may not do. I don't know. Beef prices climbing up like a freaking fireman on a ladder. So there's something. Just turn it over as little cost as possible. I'm sure my wife would enjoy that. She likes beef. We sent one out here the other day. We got 3 left, and they've actually taken off. They're eating the same amount of feed as what all 4 of them were, because the one that we got rid of was a bit of a bully. He was a bully. So Bully is now going in the freezer. I don't know how heavy he was. I wanted to ask my sister because she's the one that took him, and we'll find out. But anyhow, I guess 43 minutes of me yammering on about nonsense and stuff, and IVT transmissions, hydraulic oils. I do have to order some grease. I'm going to get some SIG 3000. I'm going to buy a couple of cases of that, several cases of that, because that's what's going to go into my drive lines. I am done with molly greases that overheat, turn to sludge, and fall out of the damn PTO shaft. I'm going to go to the SIG 3000. Used it in the past. When I was using that, I never changed a driveline. Never, ever changed a driveline. That shit worked really well. I enjoyed it. It worked really, 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 really well. So that's what I'm going to do. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. Hit the subscribe button if you want. Give me a thumbs up. It puts me higher on the ratings, and maybe some more people, they will promote this channel, and some more people will come and listen to my ramblings about agriculture and other things, like a little bit of politics, a little bit of whatever it is, and yeah. And somebody wanted me to put this in podcast form. Well, I don't even know what a podcast is, so I know what they are. I've listened to them, but I don't know how to do it. I guess I could talk to Josh Peak. He does a podcast. It's called Stuff I Heard. Stuff I Heard. I've heard. And he just talks about other podcasts, and it's not a bad program. If you will listen to other podcasts, you can get a different opinion or different perspective on what things are going. So if you haven't heard Stuff I've Heard, then go check it out. But anyways, thanks for watching.